Hello, Capricorn, and welcome to your mid-year reading from Planet Waves. My name is Eric Francis Coppolino, your astrologer for the next few minutes, here to tell you about, well, I've promised to tell you about the Great American Total Solar Eclipse that takes place about 3 weeks from now, a little bit less than that. And I'll include mention of the lunar eclipse that takes place about 1 week from now, a little bit less than that. But there's more important background, I think, which is about what has been happening to you over the past 10 years leading up to this eclipse, and what is going to be happening for, let's just say modestly, the next 3 or 4 years leading up to this eclipse, rather following on the heels of this eclipse. So what I'm viewing this eclipse as a kind of a before and after moment, and in those before and after moments, it's really good to have an idea of what came before and what is what conditions, not necessarily what events, but what conditions are going to follow along. And the thing about Capricorn and Capricorn rising is that going back to the summer of 2007, 10 years ago, Pluto was in Capricorn. Pluto entered Capricorn, and it backed out a little bit for the 2008 election, and then it came back in and has been in Capricorn ever since. So let's say we've had about 8 solid years of Pluto in your sign or in your rising sign. And when Pluto is in your sign or in your rising sign, life is intensified. There is focus, there is impact. You come into focus. You begin to have additional impact. You can discover that you have power that you don't know how to handle. And what Jeffrey Wolf Green called the evolutionary impulse associated with Pluto, he got that part right, is coming to life in your world, in your consciousness, in your psyche, in your events. And it would be possible to do an analysis quite literally of anything that has happened in your life going back between 8 and 10 years and looking at it from the context of Pluto in your sign. Now, Pluto was not acting alone in your sign. While Pluto was busy going across Capricorn, your sign, solar chart, first house, Uranus was moving through your 4th house, which is another equally potentially destabilizing influence. And these have been radically important destabilizing influences. In fact, to be destabilized is the one thing that you could have been hoping and praying and wishing for in the summer of 2007 is to be shaken up sufficiently to be set free from your expectations and from your attachments and from your self-concept and from your over-identification with your family. The idea that you are not in any way who you are unless that self-concept or that person is validated. Validated by your family. Incredibly difficult thing to have to live with, but by having Aries on the 4th house here, house of grounding, security, and family of origin, there has been a lot of identification with your family throughout your life, and Uranus has made this impossible, or you teetered on the line back and forth, and you would seek some identification with your family, and then you would realize this is not going to work, and then you'd think, but I need them. I need my mom and dad, or I need my sibs, or I need the family tradition, or whatever the thing that you would identify with as a point of security, grounding, and safety, which largely comes back to who you think you are, and that is the thing that has been shaken up. That's the tree that has been shaken. So you have experienced Pluto through your first house. You've experienced Uranus through your fourth house. The two have been working in concert to shake up your emotional reality, your family identification, and your self-concept over and over and over and over again. What is going on? Now, to make matters even more interesting, that was the before phase. In the after phase, in the year immediately following the A21 solar eclipse, which we'll get to exactly what that's talking about in a second, new planets enter your sign and enter Aries, most of them slow-moving planets. So you've had a taste of what planets in Capricorn and Aries can feel like, and the shakeup that they represent. And what's wonderful about the new planets entering Capricorn and Aries is that they're likely to bring an additional sense of grounding and stability rather than instability and unpredictable change. You will get some extra unpredictable change, but probably in the very most pleasant way possible. We'll come to that in a second. All right, so the planets entering Capricorn over the next year or so. Just working here on my little magic marker board. Here's your sign. Look at all these planets that are gathered here right before Capricorn begins, right? House 12, late in House 12, that comes right before House 1. House 12 is the end, or it's the before the beginning house, right? And not only do you have planets there, but you have planets that are gathered around the galactic center. So one thing about Capricorn that you should know as a Capricorn or Capricorn rising is that right before Capricorn begins, right before that story that through the ages and through the kind of annals of astrology history written about in numerous astrology books, right before Capricorn begins is this thing that was discovered less than 100 years ago and is hardly ever talked about by astronomers or by astrologers, and that is the galactic center is lurking right before the beginning of Capricorn. What is the galactic center? Well, it's the center of our spiral island in space. Our spiral island in space happens to be one of a massive supercluster, meaning some 100,000 or more galaxies, called Laniakea. It used to be called the Local Group and the Virgo Group and all this stuff, and now astronomers figured out in the last few years that the Virgo Group and the Local Group and everything leading to Laniakea is all part of one massive galaxy system, and that too is in Sagittarius. It is right before the beginning. Great attractor. There it is. See there? Put it right there. GA. Now, what does this say for you? Do you ever feel like you spend your life sitting on top of a ginormous gas tank, like in New Jersey, you know, like with like 5,000 million gallons of gas, and like that character Trash Can Man in The Stand by Stephen King, you're just lighting matches and dropping them down, dropping them down the opening, waiting for everything to blow up, or feeling like you're walking around on the surface of this huge bubble that might just burst at any point, or like you somehow contain far more energy than you have any concept of where it's coming from, but you cannot seem to dial it in. In case you felt like any of those ways, including the awesome Trash Can Man character in The Stand by Stephen King, We're talking about a spiritual property of Capricorn, which is that you have Sagittarius as your immediately prior house, which is profoundly influential. Take it from a horoscope writer. If you want to really understand what's going on for a sign, look at the sign right before it. In your case, that's Sagittarius, and in that case, that means that the Great Attractor and the Galactic Center, the two most relevant centers of the universe, are lurking right before your sign. So you are born of that, and yet it's always a little bit veiled. There's always a little bit of a scrim between you and this super conscious spirituality that is absolutely inherently natural to you. Okay, now that I've said all that, notice Capricorn here, Sag there. Saturn, the ruler of Capricorn, is now conjunct the galactic center. It will be for the rest of 2017. Pholus is now conjunct the galactic center. Quatwar is conjunct the galactic center. Ixion is almost conjunct. It's going to stay like around 21 degrees of Sag for a while. So, but these 3 points, Saturn, your ruling planet, especially important for that reason. Pholus, a powerful centaur planet, the second ever centaur planet. And Quatwar, the planet of family patterns, vitally important in your life because your psychological pattern is deeply invested in your concept of family. And what Quatwar is saying is that your concept of family needs to be bigger. Saturn represents your identity because it's the ruler of Capricorn, and it's lurking in the 12th house, as if you're either seen one way, hiding in the 12th house, waiting to make some discovery, or the planet that rules your sign, the significator for Capricorn, is in a long conjunction to the galactic center, charging up on the spiritual vibes emanating from the galactic center, from the spiral portal, from the, if you get a chance, go back in Planet Waves and listen to my interview with a guy named Don Oscar, who talks about the galactic center and the importance of the galactic center, particularly because I mentioned to him that it's important in his chart, but also because it's so intimately involved with the eclipse that's about to happen. And it is a portal into another dimension, and many indigenous people trace their origins either to the galactic center or to the Pleiades. I would say they're the two most common sources of human souls on the planet as indigenous people claim them and experience them. So you got the GC located 5 minutes before you wake up. It is right next door, and you lived with it and felt with it your entire life. And now Saturn, the Capricorn planet, has been parked conjunct this thing all year long, and then it's about to make its third and final exact conjunction to the galactic center through the end of the year. And Saturn is going to enter your sign, and Saturn is going to stabilize all of this intense, wanton chaos that has been stirred up by Pluto the past 8 to 10 years. Pretty good. And if Uranus has been shaking your tree and being like, well, you're shaking your tree, or like I think of Uranus as like this, in the fourth as being like this thing at the bottom of the ocean that's like sending out pulses that's vibrating the entire ocean, or like deep beneath the land or something like that. If that's been vibing you and like shaking up your need to identify with your family as a primary source of who and what you think you are, Chiron coming into your fourth house is going to focus you on a deeply personal quest for who you actually are. Easier said than done. Spoken casually from my lips. However, that's what you've got going on. And so you're about to enter a major new phase of your life, as defined by planets entering your sign for the first time in years, and planets, slow-moving planets, entering Aries for the first time in years. This could not be more personal. Couldn't be. Now, as for that eclipse, the eclipse takes place here. So it's trining your ruling planet Saturn in the galactic center and Pholus and Ixion. It's trining the Uranus-Eris conjunction, which is about for you to become Uranus in the fifth. That's going to be fun. I'm not being sarcastic when I say that. I am being adventurous. And it is here on the cusp of the house where sexuality, the eighth house, house 8, one of the major themes is sexuality, and that can range from the nature of orgasm to the sex that you want the most, to sex conveyed as a property right in the marriage contract or the dowry. Sex of a certain group of kinds is the eighth house. Birth and death, rebirth, transformation. So it's the kind of profoundly transformational sex. It's also when Mrs. Jane Doe becomes Mrs. John Smith, and there's experienced a kind of a civil death, a civil transformation. That's also a factor of the eighth house. And so all of that kind of paradox of the sex that you sign up for, or that like your daddy signs you up for when the marriage is arranged to some guy in the next town, very eighth house, or the sex you absolutely must have. The like, some people have this phenomenon where there's only one thing that gets them off. You're likely to find that one thing in the eighth house, right? So this is this interesting house, right? There's a lot going on here. Your eclipse takes place in this house, right here, on the cusp of the eighth, where the eighth becomes the ninth. Spirituality, religion, mysticism, higher self, exotic culture. You have Virgo on the house of mysticism, exotic stuff, higher self, distant things, and your vision for your life. That's not the easiest sign to have associated with the ninth house. The ninth house wants some freedom. It wants to expand, and it does not want to have to get into the technical details. It's kind of like trying to fact check the Bible, but that's your mentality. In fact, one of my official best friend, like I have the office of the best friend in this incarnation, a man named Christopher McGregor, who has a lot of Capricorn. He's got the moon, he's got the sun, he's got Venus, I think he's got Mercury. Well, Chris McGregor, in fact, fact-checked the Bible. He took a version, the Jehovah's Witness version of the Bible, and went through all the begat in the house of David, leading to the birth of Jesus, and he found a mistake. This is a very Capricorn kind of a thing to do. He's also a title searcher. Chris McGregor, if you're watching, found a fucking mistake in the Bible, and he went to the Jehovah's Witnesses and said, hey guys, you have a begat mistake. There's a mistake in the lineage of God, Jesus. And he was deeply disappointed to find out that the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Bible scholars of the Jehovah's Witnesses, who are located up in this community, didn't give a toss that there was a mistake in the lineage of Jesus. This is the Capricorn approach to religion, fact-checking the Bible. Okay, so you need more freedom than that. The nature of reality is more than can be fact-checked by conventional means. And as Chris learned, and as many of us have learned at different times and different ways in our lives, those who consider themselves to be the most pious care the least about the facts of the situation, and all they really necessarily care about is belief. And you can't afford either one of those positions. You can't be the person who's going to have anything validated by fact-checking the Bible, because ultimately it's really not validating it. And furthermore, it's not your way at all to just go by belief in some way. So you need to give yourself direct experiences. And the direct experience this eclipse is describing is how, for example, and as I put it in the right up here. And I couldn't have said it better in the monthly horoscope for August for Capricorn. So I'll take a moment and read it to you. From the wisdom of traditional Tantra, we know that spiritual growth is not real unless it incorporates and accepts sexual awareness and experience. This is Tantra, by the way. It's not any kind of a moral, freewheeling thing. It's like really pretty hard. We know that sexual experience verges on meaningless if it does not invest itself in existential awareness and love, which is the meaning of spiritual. And what I go on to say is you struggle to claim yourself back from sexual situations in which you become involved. Money gets mingled up in this, and your sense of self-worth and identity gets invested, and then it becomes very complicated. If your sense of identity and self-worth and money are tied up in a situation, that can make it very, very difficult to be able to get out of that situation in any way gracefully, or even to be honest with yourself and to find yourself and to admit what has happened. But what is now about to happen is that this portal between the particular way that you invest yourself in relationships and the way that you invest yourself in a kind of a technical spirituality is about to get blown apart. And by that I mean an opening is happening, and through that opening will enter a vestige of reality that at once embraces the sexual nature of being and the fact that all of us mammals and most reptiles and most anything that reproduces through sexual reproduction and that does not clone naturally, that is not just split in half and become another thing, though humans can do that when embryonic, right? One zygote can become two zygote, or three, and then you get the girls who posed in Penthouse, the blonde triplets who were so famous for 5 minutes. Okay, so there is therefore an opening coming between your concept of sexual relationship, meaning the contract, the agreement, and where you feel it's appropriate to seek your being through sexuality, and on the other side of that imaginary line up here, your concept of God or higher self. And one of the things about your concept of God or higher self is that over the past few years, at least if we believe astrology, it's become challenging for you to have an open model in your mind of what that is. There are structured in limitations, there are conceptual limitations that are included, and all of those look like there is going to be a kind of a like they're going to be drawn out through a vacuum, basically, and suddenly you will have some open and clear space where you have let go of your concepts, your contracts, your the sense of supremacy of agreements and many other things that have had a tendency to keep you boxed into a power structure, perhaps seeking power, perhaps trying to hold on to power, perhaps trying to affirm the power of someone else. All of this is ready to go. It's ready to not be a thing that is influencing your life, and it would seem that you're eagerly going to enter this realm, right? The eclipse here, because it is trine the galactic center, opens up a pathway of what you might call direct spiritual knowledge. Not technical spiritual knowledge, not knowledge that you can really write down or explain to anyone, but you certainly can put it into practice. You can experience what is behind the scrim, what is behind the veil in a direct way. And what may surprise you is how much this calls on you to have to rethink the whole concept of sexuality, to rethink the concept of commitment in relationship, to totally reevaluate your notion of what is and is not appropriate for relationships. And this is all on the way to a kind of a reconstruction of your self-image that has largely been deconstructed by Pluto and Uranus over the past 7 to 10 years, over and over again. And so this opening happens, and then planets then enter your sign and enter the fourth house, another kind of extension of your sign, Aries on the fourth, family and security. And you get to do a lot of cleanup work. You get to really tidy up the issues and the subject matter that have been so closely associated with this very challenging time that you've been through these years. Now, one more thing. Let's end on a super duper exciting note, and this is, I don't know whether you consider yourself some kind of an artist or creative. I have a feeling that most people who come back to Planet Waves on any kind of regular basis do consider themselves some form of cultural creative. They want to contribute. They want to make things. Many people are painters, artists, sculptors, musicians, actors. Every conceivable kind of artist I have found 100 times over at Planet Waves, including people sitting in your CD collection who perhaps struggle more than others to maintain their artistic integrity because all this eighth house contractual money stuff is involved, and sometimes people with the very most talent struggle to be creatively free. Hence you get bands like Radiohead quitting their record contract, flipping the bird to the record companies and saying, we're doing this ourselves, pay a penny for our CD if you want it. And then people pay $10. So maybe you're one of these creatives, and even if you're not, the fifth house is exciting because it's where we play. The fifth is a house of play. House number 5. See that? You've got Taurus there. See that? Little that. This is all the fifth house right there. And right now, there's not a lot in the way of planets. Sedna's back there somewhere, kind of dark, shadowy figure. But Uranus is about to enter over the course of the next year, enter your fifth house, and that is a bold, bold adventure for you. That is exciting. That is going to wake up the inner artist, the inner lover, the inner passionate person that you are. And the fifth house is also, if you don't consider yourself someone who's one of these paintbrush musical instrument types, the fifth is the house of games, adventure, hiking, rock climbing, bungee jumping, going to Las Vegas, and gambling, and sex. Only it's the sex you have for fun, not the sex of the marital bed, not the ritualized snatch the veil off the bride and carry her to the bed, but the sex that you have that's more like, sorry, lowering the f-stop here a little bit by reflecting some light back at the camera. The sex you have for fun, for pleasure, for creative inspiration, not necessarily to have babies or to certify the commitment of a relationship or to fulfill your marital duty. The fifth has nothing to do with that. The fifth is the spontaneous experience of sex that just, you do it because it's the thing to do. You do it because you can. And Uranus in the fifth, particularly in Taurus, the sign of the physical body is going to turn your physical body into the body electric, and you're going to want to be naughty. And in case no one else gives you permission to be as naughty as you want to be, take it from me, your astrologer or your kind of cosmic messenger. You have permission to be as naughty as you want to be, and that means sexually naughty, creatively naughty, adventurously naughty. If you really need to go to the Indian reservation and gamble $1,000, then go to the Indian reservation and gamble $1,000. You have, a slightly higher than average chance of coming back with more than the $1,000. But really, the gambling aspect of the fifth is to squander it. The real use of the fifth is to have the kind of fun that the teenagers and the children like to have, and that artists like to have. And you are about to be inducted into the ranks of artists, whether for serious or for play or for honorary purposes. That's it. That's what I've got to say. Don't forget to catch your rising sign, and I'll be back in a couple of months with your audio birthday reading, and coming right up on the 2018 annual edition of Planet Waves. I'm figuring out what to say by doing these readings, but I haven't figured out what to call it yet. Maybe I'll call it Chinese medicine balls. These are very good, by the way, for helping your wrists and your arms if you type a lot. They're the best thing that I found besides my miraculous chiropractor, the only one I'll go to, for healing any form of repetitive stress, because they really do kind of stretch all your muscles and tendons out. Okay, thanks for listening. Have fun. Uranus in the fifth house. Big time fun. All right. Love. Bye for now.